Okay, so the first example here is 3 over 4 times 1 over 2. I'd like you to try to solve this and then reduce your answer to the lowest terms if necessary. And if you get stuck, don't worry, I'll teach you how to do it. So I'd like you to pause the video and try this out now. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to try this out. So whenever you multiply fractions, you're going to just go right across. You take the top number, which here we have 3, and the top number of the second fraction, which is 1, and you multiply them. So what is 3 times 1? Well, hopefully you know that 3 times 1 is just 3. And so you do the same with the bottom numbers. So we take the 4 and we multiply it by 2, and 4 times 2 is just 8. So the final answer here is 3 over 8, and we're already in the lowest terms here. So that's the correct answer. Okay, here's another example for you to try. This one is 3/5 times 1/3. And I'd like you to do the same thing, pause the video, try to solve it yourself, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so let's go over how to do this question. And we're going to do the same thing. We just multiply right across here. We do 3 times 1, and I'm drawing an arrow to show that I'm rewriting this. So 3 times 1 again is just 3. And 5 times 3 is what? Hopefully you know that that is 15. The question we now need to ask ourselves is, am I in the lowest terms here? Okay, do I need to reduce this answer further? In this case, the fraction can be reduced by dividing both the top and the bottom numbers by the greatest common factor of 3 and 15. All right, so in other words, I want to see if there's a number I can divide both the top and the bottom number by. And in this case, I can just simply do 3. So let me rewrite what happens here when I divide the top number by 3 and the bottom number by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is just simply 1. 15 divided by 3 is going to give me 5. So the final answer here is 1/5. Here's a division example. So I'd like you to pause the video and try to do this one. 2 over 5 divided by 8 over 9. So I'll give you a chance to pause and try this now. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to go over this. And if you weren't sure how to do divisions with fractions, then don't worry, because that's what you're here to learn in the video. And any division with fractions question, you have to first realize that it's the same as multiplying the first fraction by the reciprocal or the inverse of the second fraction. Now, if you're scratching your head wondering what those two fancy words mean, in other words, all you do is you flip the second fraction upside down and you multiply. And then, of course, we always want to reduce to the lowest terms. Let's start by flipping the second fraction upside down. So I'm showing an arrow here to show that I'm rewriting it. And you can see that once I flip this upside down, it's just 8 over 9 turns into 9 over 8. And now I just multiply just like we were doing in the previous examples. So what's 2 times 9? 2 times 9 gives me 18. What about 5 times 8? Well, 5 times 8 is 40. So we have 18 over 40. And a good clue to know that this is not in the lowest terms yet is to ask yourself, can we divide both the top number and the bottom number by 2? When you have two even numbers, you're going to be able to do that. So 18 divided by 2 is 9, 40 divided by 2 is 20, and the final answer here is 9 over 20. So the next question is the same instructions except with one added step. It says simplify improper fractions as mixed numbers. And if you have no clue what that means, just try your best and then hopefully you'll learn something that can help you get a better score on GED math. So pause the video, give this your best shot, and then we'll go over how to do it. Okay, so this is a divisions with fractions problem. So I'm going to start it the same way I always recommend starting it. So I'm drawing an arrow just to show I'm rewriting this. Obviously, you don't need to write an arrow out yourself. I just want to signify what I'm doing. So I leave the first fraction, 5 over 6, exactly the same. This division sign, I'm going to turn it into a multiplication sign. And my second fraction here, which is 2 over 3, I want to flip it upside down. So now I have 3 over 2. Then I just multiply across. So I do 5 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 2 gives me 12. And now I could reduce this right now, or I could wait, but I'm just going to reduce it right now. So for 15 and 12, I want to think, what's a number that I can divide both the top and the bottom number of the fraction by? What about 3? If I do 15 divided by 3, that's going to give me what? 5. And if I do 12, divide that by 3, I get 4. So I'm not done yet because I have an improper fraction. So if you got to this step right here and then you weren't sure what to do as far as converting it to a mixed number, then you still did a really, really good job of getting it here. But I want to take this a step forward now and make sure that we can convert this into a mixed number. So an improper fraction is just a fraction where the bigger number where the top number is bigger than the bottom number. So let's look at 5 over 6 and 2 over 3. These are both proper fractions because the top number is smaller than the bottom number. Now, if you look at 3 over 2, for example, that's an improper fraction because the top number is bigger than the bottom number. Same with 5 over 4. So to convert it to a mixed number, we want to keep the same bottom number. In other words, we're going to keep the same denominator. So let me write it up here where there's a little bit of room. So the 4 is still going to go down here in our denominator, which denominator is another fancy word for the bottom number of the fraction. A mixed number is going to have a fraction and it's going to have a whole number out here. So I want to look at the 4 and think, what number can I multiply 4 by that is going to give me something that is close to 5, but it has to be something that is less than 5. What about 4 times 2? Well, 4 times 2 is going to get me what? 4 times 2 is going to get me 8. So that's not going to work. That's not going to be any good. That's going to be too high. All right. So what about 4 times 1? Well, if I just stick to 4 times 1, I know that 4 times 1 is 4, and then I need to find a number that I can add to 4 to give me 5. Well, simply put, 4 plus 1 gives me 5, so I just put a 1 up here. So I have 4 times 1 plus another 1 gets me 5. All right, so this is my mixed number. This is the correct answer here. Okay, so here's your next example. 5 over 11 divided by 2 over 3 times 4 over 5. We're combining multiplication and division, so pause the video, try to figure this out, and if you get stuck, don't worry because we're just going to go over it. Okay, so let's get into this one. So the first thing I would do, and there's different ways to approach this question, but the first thing I would do is I would just right off the bat rewrite it so that we get rid of this division. So let me draw my arrow as I always do, and let me rewrite it for you. So my rewrite, all I did was I just took this division sign out and I flipped this fraction over, so I have 5 over 11 times 3 over 2 times 4 over 5. Now I'm just going to work this just like I would any other multiplication with fractions questions. We've just got 3 fractions to work with here. So let me just multiply right across. So what is 5 times 3? 5 times 3 is 15, and so we have 15. Now, what's 15 times 4? 15 times 4 is 60, and we go right across for the bottom too. So 11 times 2 is 22, and 22 times 5 is 110. And I don't mind because right now we're just practicing. So if you use a calculator to do things like 11 times 2 or 11 times 2 is 22 times 5, anything like that is okay. I just don't want you sticking this whole thing in a calculator and hitting equals because you're just going to get the answer and it's not going to help you because you're not going to learn how to actually work with the fractions. But I'm okay with you using a calculator as much as you need to get stuff like the 60 and the 110, if that makes sense. Now here, when we simplify this, there's a little trick. We just take a 0 out of the top and the bottom, so we just cross out this 0, cross out this 0. We have 6 and 11. Now, a good clue to when your fraction is reduced to the lowest terms is if you've got an even number and an odd number. Now, there's always exceptions. Remember earlier on in the video, we had 15 and 12. So 15 is an odd number, 12 is an even number. We could both reduce these down, okay? But sometimes you can't do that, and this is an example of a case where we have an even number and an odd number, and there's nothing else to reduce. So 6 over 11 is the correct answer here. Okay, so here's your next example, 13 over 14 times 11 over 5. Let's pause the video. Let's have you pause the video and take a stab at this one, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so here, for multiplication, all we're going to do is we just multiply straight across to start us off here. And so what is 13 times 11? And it's perfectly okay to do that in a calculator. And however you did it, if you wrote it out by hand or in your calculator, the answer you should get is 143. And 14 times 5 is 70. So we have a massive fraction here, right? This is an improper fraction because the bigger number is in the top, right? The numerator is bigger than the denominator. And so what we need to do is turn this into a mixed number to get the right answer. So if you got to here, 143 over 70, then I'm happy because you're getting the basic concept here, which is important, but you have to also know how to take it the next step. And so, like I said, for an improper fraction, you start with that same denominator. And when you're going from an improper fraction to a mixed number, I should say, you start with that same denominator, but you're going to need a whole number out here and another number up top here. And so the idea here is we will get the 143, and we think, what's a number I can multiply 70 by that's going to get me something that is close to 143, but it has to be lower. And if you're not sure, just start off by going through 70 times 1. You could try 70 times 2, and you can even try 70 times 3, and just keep going until you find something that is close to 143, but it can't be over. So 70 times 1 just gives me 70. That could work. Running out of room to write here. 70 times 2 is going to be 140. And this is a 140. It's just going to look scrunched because I'm at the edge of my screen here, but it is 140. And what about 70 times 3? 70 times 3, let me write it down here, that equals 210. So we know that that is going to be too big, so we can't put a 3 here. 3 is going to get us to 210, which is over 143. And we don't want to use a 1 because 1 is going to be 70, right? 1 is going to be a number that is smaller than 143, but it's not the closest thing. 140 is the closest number we can get to 143. So we'll use that too. 70 times 2 is going to give me 140. Now, what can I add to 140 to get 143? Well, 140 plus 3, simply put, is going to get me 143. And we can check it by doing 70 times 2. 70 times 2 is 140. And add 3, which would be 143. So that's how you can check it. So here's the final answer. Okay, so here's a little different type of example for you, but it's the same concepts we've been talking about. So I'd like you to pause the video, try to figure this out, and if you get stuck, don't worry, we'll go over it. Okay, so here the first move I would make is I'm going to take this mixed number and I want to convert it back into an improper fraction. So to do that, the first thing I want you to remember, again, like I mentioned this earlier in the video, but I'll hit on it again here for repetition, is that the mixed number and improper fraction are going to have the same number in the denominator. So I know 9 will be my denominator. So what I do is I do 9 times 1, which is just 9. Then I add 5, which is 14. And so now what I have to do next is I want to take this and I'm going to flip the fraction upside down and multiply it just as we've been doing. So here's my little arrow, but I'm actually going to rewrite this up here. So 6 is now going to be multiplied by 9 over 14. Now, how do I deal with multiplying a number, like a whole number like a 6, by a fraction? Well, you should note that every whole number, right? If I write 7, 8, 9, 10, doesn't matter which, you can always imagine there's like a little imaginary 1 down here. We just don't usually write it. So when I do this, you can just think of this as doing 6 times 9. And so we have 6 times 9, which is 54. And 1 times 14 is just going to be 14. We're not in the reduced form yet. So to get down to the reduced or the lowest form, we see that we have 2 even numbers here, so we can simply try to divide both the top and the bottom numbers by 2 and see what happens. So what is 54 divided by 14? If we do, actually what we're going to do is we're going to, like I said, divide the top and bottom number by 2, I mean to say. So that is going to result with 27, because 54 divided by 2 is 27. 14 divided by 2 is just simply 7. So we're now down to our improper fraction, but remember, we've got to get this into a mixed number because that's what the directions tell us. So we're going to do that same kind of process that we've been doing, where we have to take the 7 and we need to find some number that I can multiply it by that will get me something close to 27, but it can't be greater than 27. And if you're not sure how to do that, remember I recommend to just running through your times table. So 7 times 1 is just 7, and we know that 7 times 2 is what? 7 times 2 is 14, and 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28. So I'm not going to write that because I'm running out of space here. But if we picked a 4 right here, we'd be at a number greater than 27, which we don't want. So we're going to want to stick with the 3. 7 times 3 is 21. Now, how do I get up to 27 from there, right? 21 plus what is going to give me 27? Well, hopefully you know that that's 6. So the final answer here is 3 and 6 over 7. So if you got that, really nice job. If you want some more practice with not just fractions, but more GED math topics in general to help you boost your score, you can check out my GED math quick practice test video. It's only going to take you about 8 minutes. So if you're pressed for time and you need to just hit as many topics as possible, that's what I would recommend. But whether you do that or not, it doesn't matter to me. I really appreciate you being here